A woman alone, walking the corridors of power in Tudor England, dopily defying the orthodoxy of the state religion. Was it bravery or treason? Askew, known as such in court records, became one of the most infamous figures executed under King Henry VIII, born in 1521 to Sir William Askew, a Lincolnshire landowner loyal to the crown, and was educated a rarity for women of her time. But education, in her case, was a weapon? In an era when the line between religious reform and heresy was razor thin and embraced Protestantism, specifically rejecting transubstantiation, the belief that the Eucharistic bread and wine become the literal body and blood of Christ. To question it was, under the 1539 Act of 6 Articles, a capital offense. Her words were uncompromising. I would rather read 5 lines in the Bible than hear 5 masses in the church, she declared during her examination. Those weren't careless provocations, they were deliberate challenges to Tudor religious policy. By 1545, her preaching in London had drawn the attention of Bishop Stephen Gardiner and Chancellor Thomas Wriothesley, fierce defenders of Catholic doctrine. They viewed Anne not as a misguided subject, but as a subversive threat, undermining the monarchy's claim as the supreme head of the Church of England. To complicate matters, Anne's questioning of doctrine coincided with political tensions at court, particularly suspicions surrounding Queen Catherine Parr, herself known for evangelical sympathies. Anne was arrested, interrogated, and released once. But they came for her again. This time, she would not walk free. In the words of John Bale, a Protestant contemporary, and was a virgin not only pure and undefiled in body, but also a pure virgin in the faith of Christ. That purity of conviction would soon bring her face to face with the most feared torture device in England, the rack. Beneath the stone chambers of the Tower of London, Askew was dragged into a world from which few ever returned whole. What followed was an act of state violence so extreme, it shocked even Tudor England, a land already hardened by fire, gallows, and blade. That should have been the end, and had already been tried and condemned for heresy. But her silence about others, especially the women at court suspected of sharing her Protestant beliefs, left her inquisitors unsatisfied. Chancellor Thomas Wriothesley and Sir Richard Rich, acting under the sanction of the Privy Council, took an unprecedented step. They personally oversaw the torture of a condemned woman, an act extraordinary even by the standards of Henry VIII's regime. The rack was designed to painfully stretch the body to the point of severe joint damage. It was rarely used on women and never with such direct political intent. Anne, bound by wrists and ankles, was stretched until her shoulders and hips were violently dislocated, until the strength in my arms and legs was completely destroyed. They did put me on the rack because I confessed no ladies or gentlewomen to be of my opinion. According to her own account, she described Wriothesley and Rich turning the wheel with their own hands, but even in this agony, she gave them nothing. Torture, though technically illegal under English common law without royal consent, had become a shadow instrument of Tudor authority, justified through a royal warrant or simply by political necessity. I had rather to die, she wrote later, than to break my faith. And Askew's case blurred the thin line between judicial process and outright persecution. She wasn't tortured for information about herself. She was tortured to implicate others, perhaps even Queen Catherine Parr. Yet Anne's resolve did not break. Yet the court still demanded her execution. Her defiance made her more than a heretic. She became a symbol unshaken, even when her body was irreparably destroyed. When they were finished, she was so mutilated that she could no longer walk. It was July 16, 1546, and the place was Smithfield, London, known historically as a site of executions for heretics. She was carried broken, bound, and barely alive back to her cell. Her interrogators hoped the rack would make her compliant. Instead, it immortalized her. The cruelty inflicted upon her body only deepened the power of her conviction. Unable to walk, her body weakened by prior torture, and Askew was carried to the stake in a chair, her body wrecked by the rack, her will unshaken. Here, beneath the eyes of nobles, clergy, and commoners alike, England performed its darkest rituals. But this time was different, and was not alone. 3 other condemned men, John Lascelles, John Hadlam, and John Hemley, shared her fate that day. Yet it was Anne who drew the crowd's gaze. She was the first English woman known to be tortured in the Tower and then burned at the stake. The sheer brutality of her treatment had already circulated in hushed tones across the capital. Records indicate that a small seat or support was constructed to keep her upright. As the fire was kindled, the crowd looked on. Beneath her, executioners stacked bundles of drywood faggots, seasoned for maximum flame. They were public, performative, and designed to terrify, and Askew died without confession, without betrayal, and without fear. Eyewitness accounts describe her demeanor as calm, even composed. She reportedly refused a final recantation. Bishop Nicholas Shaxton, formerly a Protestant who had returned to Catholic doctrine, was appointed to preach at the burning, but ignored him entirely. Bale records that she remained silent during his sermon, her lips unmoving. A bag of gunpowder was tied around her neck, a common practice to hasten death and reduce suffering by detonating during the flames. In Tudor England, burnings were not hidden acts. Her weakened body became the focus of a grim execution meant to purge England of heresy. But rather than silence her, the flames ignited a legacy. Her writings, preserved in the examinations of an Askew, circulated widely among Protestant reformers. John Foxe later included her story in his Acts and Monuments, stating she was burned for the testimony of Jesus. The message was clear. The state could destroy the body, but it could not claim the soul. Her agony became an indictment of England's brutal religious policy, a policy so violent that it turned a young woman into a martyr before the eyes of the realm. At Smithfield, an Askew's suffering ended in flames. But from its ashes rose one of the most haunting testaments of the English Reformation. The torture and execution of an Askew stand as a grave testament to the peril faced by those who dared question power in Tudor England. Her agony was not just a personal tragedy, but a stark revelation of the era's ruthless struggle over conscience and belief. How do such moments of state-sanctioned violence continue to echo through our ideas of justice and faith today? Comment below, as Anne herself wrote, "I would rather to die than to break my faith."